So last week, Brent started a message. He talked about why baptism. We kind of started a 4-week series on why. Um, Today, I'm going to talk about why Lifepoint Church. Why did we start this church? Um, if you look around town, if you drive around, there are plenty of other churches in Livingston County and the surrounding area. So why did we go to do this? And really the answer is to get more people into church. We're trying to reach people that maybe other churches aren't reaching. And the way we look at it is we're not competing. We are all on the same team. Every Christian church is fighting the same battle. They have the same goal in mind. And we're just trying to maybe to capture some of that audience that other people aren't capturing. One way of thinking about it is going fishing. If you're going to go bass fishing, you're not going to use chicken liver. You're not going to use a catfish rig. You're going to use a spinner bait or a plastic worm, whatever it is. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to offer a new technique, a little bit different service to attract other people, to get a new audience. And that's what we're working on. So the question becomes, what is our mission? How are we doing what we're doing? Why are we doing what we're doing? And personally, I think mission statements and the term mission is way overused. The hospital has a mission statement. Every business in town has a mission statement. Every charitable organization has a mission statement. Usually it is something that we just write down because we have to get a charter or to get a tax exempt status or whatever the case may be. It's just another piece of paperwork. I don't want our mission statement to be just another saying, another line on a page. When I think of mission, I want to think of something big. I want you guys to think of something big. And when I think of a mission, when I think of an epic mission, I think of the invasion of Normandy during World War II. In late 1940, early 1941, Germany controlled the great majority of Europe. They controlled a very sizable portion of Asia. And frankly, they were on track to take over the world. They were going to dominate everything. And the Allied forces realized that if they did not come together, come up with a game plan, come up with a mission, and do something drastic, that the face of the world would change forever, that there would be no way to turn the war and win. So they got together, came up with a mission. It didn't happen overnight. There's a lot of planning that went into it, a lot of work. The Allied forces included the U.S., the UK, Canada, France, Poland, Australia, Belgium, New Zealand, Netherlands, Norway, Czechoslovakia, and Greece. And they all worked over several months to put this mission together, to come up with a game plan. Their mission was complicated by the fact that Germany knew we were going to invade. They knew that we had to do something. They knew it was coming. Not only that, but they also had a pretty good idea of when it was going to happen. There was only about 10 days each month where the moon was right at night, where the Air Force could see. The planes back then were a little different than now. We actually needed to visualize our targets. And also during that same time, the tide was right so that it was low enough to where we could see all the bombs and the traps that the Germans had set on the shore. So they had it narrowed down to a pretty good window. The other thing was there was a lot of radio communication. All those countries I just listed off, we were communicating back and forth, all the different branches of the service, and they were able to pick up on that radio conversation. So they knew, had a good idea. They had a lot of tips on when this was going to happen. And then even with the planning, it wasn't something that was just planned and we went out and did. All the soldiers, all the troops in the different arms, or in the different services, the different branches of the service, trained. They trained extensively for their role. During one of the training missions, the United States was doing a practice invasion, and the Germans caught word of it and basically did a surprise attack, and we lost 638 U.S. soldiers during a practice run. Can you imagine today? I mean, we lose one soldier during a practice run, and it's all over the place, all over the news, and they lost 638. But it didn't deter anybody. Everybody kept, they pushed through, they kept working. Obviously, there were things that they were going to work on and tweak, but it didn't stop the mission, because everybody knew it was such a big mission, such an important thing, that they were fighting for something bigger than themselves. So the initial plan was there was going to be a full moon on June 6th, 1941. Eisenhower planned to launch the attack on June 5th, and that way all the timing would be right, be able to get in there with some light. However, early June the weather was pretty bad, and on June 4th a storm came through. It caused high seas and low clouds. With the seas being so high, our ships couldn't even get close enough to the shore to drop our troops off. With the clouds and the storms, our Air Force couldn't see, so we couldn't bomb and do any damage to the fortresses that the Germans had set up on the beach. We knew we had to do something, because each day things were getting worse and worse. We were losing this war, and we weren't going to be able to come back. It was going to be another month before the weather was right. And really, the hero of this, one of the heroes, is kind of an unsung hero. It's actually a meteorologist. A meteorologist in 1941. It was Eisenhower's chief meteorologist, Group Captain J.M. Stagg, was able to study the weather, study the maps, and he realized that on June the 6th, the storms were going to let up long enough to get the ships in so we could invade. They had a meeting about it. Everybody was on board except for the Air Force. They didn't really want to do it because they weren't going to be able to do the clouds were still there, so they weren't going to really be able to offer much support. But we went ahead with it. Eisenhower went ahead and gave the order. He knew he had to do it. So one of the things I'd like to point, this meteorologist in 1941 clearly was more accurate than the meteorologist today. Sometimes we should just go out and look. But anyhow, so the other thing that worked to our advantage on this was the weather was so bad that a lot of the German leaders and the senior officers, as well as the troops of the German army, actually they left their bases for the weekend because they thought there is no way that they're going to be able to attack, so they went out to party and have a good time, which worked to our advantage. There was a lot of them missing. Most of the commanders were gone. So on June 6th, we launched the attacks. That's June 6, 1941. That's D-Day. If you guys don't know about D-Day, go read about it. It's pretty amazing. So the mission started that day, and it was coordinated and executed over the next several months. The Allied forces regained control of at least Western Europe during that time, and it allowed us to get a foothold in and eventually change the war. By July 24th of 1941, so you're talking 6-7 weeks, 120,000 Allied force soldiers and 113,000 German soldiers died during this invasion, during this mission. The odds, just the story, most of you have probably seen Saving Private Ryan, and when people were jumping out of the boats and heading to shore, and they were just getting slayed. They were just getting shot down, murdered. But the drive that they had, because they knew that there was something bigger, they knew they had to do it, and they were willing to risk their lives. Basically, they were risking their lives, hoping the guy behind them would make it. And to me, that's a mission. That's incredible. The mission was planned. It was calculated. Every detail was taken into account for it. And again, it was so important that people didn't care. These were 18, 19, 20-year-old kids and older, but they knew they were going to die, but they did it because they saw the bigger picture. They did it because they didn't want to be speaking German. They also did it because the Germans, the Nazi camps, they were torturing people. The Nazis, they did an amazing and incredible amount of studies on human beings during this episode, or during this time. They would actually freeze people. They would slowly lower the temperature, and every hour go out and douse them with cold water just to bring their body temperatures colder and colder. And while they did this, they would measure their vital signs to see the physiologic response that we had to this. And these people, barbaric torture, and the people were crying out, screaming. And so finally, the Germans started to sedate them. not because they felt sorry for the people. They were annoyed by them. They sedated them just so they would stop yelling, because it was annoying to them that they were, crying as they were being tortured. The Germans did studies on decompression. They were wanting to see how high they could take their pilots before they would have issues, medical issues. And so they would slowly lower the pressure in these chambers to simulate the altitude until basically their lungs would blow up inside of them. And they would watch this just through a piece of glass. They'd watch them do this and watch them die. There's all sorts of studies that we still use today about sleep deprivation and the circadian rhythms and all that. It all came from Nazi camps, to where they would just make these people stay awake and just watch and see what happened to them. What they did, at what point was the breaking point, when would they go crazy, and that's what people were fighting for. It was bigger than just the battle itself, the battle on that front. It was for the people, in the camps, the people that were being tortured. Again, that's a mission. That's what I want you guys to think of when you think of a mission, something big. Something big. So that brings me to the mission of Lifepoint Church. So why are we here? What are we doing? The mission of Lifepoint Church is to bring people to a life-saving decision to follow Jesus as Lord and Savior, equip them to intimately know God, walk with Him daily, and teach others to do the same. The mission we have is focused on the unchurched people of Livingston County, the unchurched people of the surrounding area, Carroll, Lynn, Grundy, any of the surrounding areas. That's who we're after. That does not mean that at some point we won't do mission work abroad or anything like that, or we don't think it's a bad thing to do mission work abroad. But our focus, our church, we are wanting to get the people in this area into church. We're wanting to make a change locally. Our mission is the Great Commission. Matthew 28:19 says, Jesus says, "Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit." Our passion is to build God's kingdom here on earth in this area. In the comparison to the invasion of Normandy, that mission, some might say it's a little dramatic and a little bit of a drastic comparison, but we're at war. We are at war, and our mission should be looked upon with the same seriousness as that mission. Every day, people are dying to the devil, going to hell, because we don't step out and talk to them. People here on earth are suffering. They're leading empty, pointless lives. They're trying to fill it with whatever material things they can because they don't have a sense of meaning. There's people in this church right now that are doing that they're lost. They just don't have that sense of importance in their life. They don't have the direction. And it's our job. It's the goal of this church to offer hope to those people, to the people in here like that, the people outside of here like that. And that hope is Jesus. And we need to convey that to them. I think that this is worth fighting for. I think it's worth sticking our neck out for a little bit and maybe being the odd one in society that's actually willing to talk about Jesus and talk to a friend about it. I think Jesus thought this was worth fighting for. The last thing Jesus said before He ascended to heaven was the Great Commission. It's something we need to take seriously. It's something we need to do. So when we look at our mission statement, how do we do this? How do we act it out? How do we actually put action to these words? Well, the first part, the first statement, bringing people to a life-saving decision to follow Jesus. That's where the meat of our mission statement is. That's what everything focuses around. Romans 10:13 says, "For everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved." That's great news, because it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what your past has been, what mistakes you've made, what mistakes you're making now, who you've offended. There are no exclusions. Jesus does not exclude us. The people that get excluded, we are the ones that exclude people because we know I know what you did in high school, or I know what you used to be like. That's us. That's us that's holding up, building those walls. Jesus doesn't care about that. He's offering his salvation to everybody. And we need to remember that as a church. We need to remember to go out and go after people and break down those barriers. So why doesn't this happen? Why don't we talk to Jesus about people? And the biggest reason is fear. When I was thinking about this and the fear of talking to somebody and knowing what to say, it reminded me of a story when I was in medical school. I was a fourth-year med student, and I was doing an emergency room. I was in the ER doing a rotation, and the ambulance had called. They were bringing a guy in that was coding. He was dead, and they were working on him. And our attending physician, I was with an intern, a first-year resident, and he looked at the intern and said, "Do you want to run the code?" And she said, "No, no, I don't." She was nervous, and rightfully so. And he asked me, he said, "What about you, Miller? Do you want to run the code?" And I was naive, and I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll run it." And I remember him. He looked at me, and he put his hand on my shoulder, and he told me, he said, "Don't worry, they're already dead." And basically what he was saying was, don't worry, you can't mess them up any more than they already are. So, relax and just go do what you do. And I think it was powerful. It really stuck with me, and I think it's really applicable to what we're doing today. If you think about that, that's a strong picture. If we know somebody, if we have a friend, a neighbor, an acquaintance, doesn't have to be a friend. I mean, just if we know somebody who doesn't know Jesus, but we don't want to go talk to him because we're afraid that they might say no or they might shut us down. It's like we're not even trying. We're killing them. We are sentencing them to a life of damnation. So I would ask you to remember that. Just think about that and think about, if you go to the ER, do you want the guy that's in the ER to try? Do you want him to at least try? Or the guy that's in the ambulance crew, do you at least want him to try? Or just say, man, they're not worth it. I'm not even going to give it an effort. So talk to them. Another reason we don't talk to people is because of persecution. And frankly, I think that this is a cop-out. It's an excuse, because in our country, we are not persecuted. If you go talk to somebody about Jesus or try to start that conversation, you might get made fun of, or they might laugh at you, but you're not persecuted. But you'll hear people say that frequently, like, "Oh, I'm worried about that." And there's countries out there to where you might get put to death or imprisonment for talking about Jesus. But fortunately, we do not live in one of those countries. So scratch that one off the list. You can't use that as an excuse. People talk about being embarrassed. And a lot of that has to do with the social norms and the way our society is changing. If you look at 15, 20 years ago, the things that were on TV versus the things that are on TV now, just what is acceptable to be on television now, it's alarming. I mean, it's incredible what they'll put on television and what has become the social norm. And we got to fight the embarrassment. We got to go out and share our story and get it out there and let people know that not everybody thinks that everything is okay. I think we have to love everybody and accept everybody, but we don't have to love what they're doing or the actions that they're doing or what they're worshiping. But we have to be willing to stick up for it. We have to be able to stick up for our beliefs and for Christianity. Another big issue with people and myself included, especially on these, is our priorities. What are we putting at the top of our priority list? For a lot of us, family is our number one priority, and family is a great priority to have. I think, though, if you're really in the Word and you put God as your top priority, your family is going to improve. If you put God above family, if you put Jesus above family, your home life is just going to get better. Our jobs are a priority that we often put ahead, and we often, we think, man, well, we got all these bills to pay and all this stuff that has to get done. When I think about it and think about what I did, what I sacrificed to become a doctor, I have 11 years. I was in school. I was at MU for 11 years. I went to MU for 11 years after high school. and the tuition for med school is not cheap. Sacrificed a lot of money and a lot of years. And I think about it, and it really now, it upsets me to think if somebody came to me or if Jesus spoke to me and said, I want you to make those same sacrifices on my behalf for something I want you to do, would I do that? My answer is no, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't, go study something about, Christianity or go do something for 11 years, sacrificing my family and everything like I did for medical school. And that's embarrassing to me. But I know that about myself. I know that I'm not willing. I'd be a hypocrite if I stood up here and said, yeah, I would do that, because I wouldn't. God knows I wouldn't do it. My hope is if I keep digging in, keep in the Word, keep surrounding myself with people that are building me up, maybe if that calling comes someday, I would do it. But right now I wouldn't, but I'm working on it. Sports. Sports is a huge priority that takes our focus off of Christ. Or not even takes our focus, just puts them in the back seat. I can talk to anybody in here about the Royals. I don't care if you like the Royals. I don't even care if you're interested in them. I will talk to you about them. And you might give me that blank look telling me to shut up. I don't care. I just keep fighting through it. And Danny Duffy, last night, he threw one pitch and came out with a sore shoulder. I'm worried about that. I'm really worried because we need Duffy if we're going to make the playoffs. I'll keep going. So, sports in our families, our kids playing sports. Sports are a great thing. I played a lot of sports growing up. I think it's important, though, that as a family, we keep our focus and keep sports in the right place as, a place where we can learn teamwork, we can learn to work together. Obviously, from a physical standpoint, it's good to exercise and be in shape. But sports is not the priority. And I think about, I say myself growing up, sports, other than academics were very important in our household, but sports were right there with them. It was, unfortunately, God was not there. And that's something I'm trying to change in my own family, putting God at the top and maybe a little less emphasis on the other stuff so that we can have our priorities in line. Another thing that keeps us from sharing Jesus is we feel like we have a lack of knowledge. Like I said, I'll go, even if I don't know everything about the Royals or the Chiefs who are getting ready to play today, I'll still talk to you about them. I don't care if I make a mistake or I don't know everything. I think we really get afraid if we're going to talk to somebody about Christ, and if they ask us a question that we don't know the answer to, I think that shuts us down and it keeps us from talking. So when I was a second-year resident, which would have been 8 years ago, some 8 years ago, I was getting trained to do vasectomies. So if you guys think that I look young now, you put me 8 years ago and a lot of stress ago, I look like a baby. So I was in the room with this guy that's getting ready to have his vasectomy, and we're waiting on the urologist, and he's prepped, he's ready. He's sitting there on the bed in a pretty vulnerable position, and we're talking, and it's later and later, and I could just see something was bothering him. And finally, he looks at me, and he's like, man, how many of these things have you done? And I looked, and I kind of looked at him, and I just shrugged my shoulders. I said, you do not even want to know. And it gave that, I was confident what I was doing, but it reassured him. He thought, man, this guy's done hundreds of these things. So I didn't lie to him. I just kind of manipulated the situation. But I think we need to have that same confidence when we're sharing Christ. We may not have all the answers, and we may not have all this experience, but we can tell what Christ has done in our life, and nobody can argue with that. I mean, if you're sharing your story, your testimony, there's no arguing that. There's no rebuttal to it. So have that confidence to share. Another great way, and maybe even the most important way that we bring people to Christ, bring people into the church, is we got to walk it out. Matthew 5, verse 14 and 16 says, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven." This doesn't mean we have to be perfect, but this means that we can't come in here on Sunday morning pat ourselves on the back because we went to church, cross it off our list, and then go out and live the same old life we've been living, make the same mistakes, say the same words, act the same way at work or at home, people see right through that. They'll see right through it, and they want a real person. They want somebody who's genuine, and they'll realize that, if you make a mistake, admit it, apologize. When we were starting this church, Brent sent out a survey, and the question was, why do most people not go to church? And it wasn't even close. The overwhelming number one answer was because Christians are hypocrites. Because, we'll sit here and say this, we'll do this, we're all, we're great, we have all this power, Jesus is on our side, but we don't act it out. We're not nice to people. We're not, we don't share what we have inside. And just remember that they'll see right through that. People, we're not dumb. We can pick up on that real quickly. Romans 3:23 says, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." So remember that this is open to everybody. We all make mistakes. None of us are perfect. So let's not act like we are. Let's be real with people and share with them and let them see our life for what it is. The second and third parts of the statement I kind of combined into this next section, and that is equipping people to know God and help people walk with Him daily. So the equipment that we have and the equipment we want to build, the first one's the Bible. You have to have knowledge of God's Word. You have to know what He's saying to you, what He means, what He wants us to do. And the other ones, you have to have people around you. You have to have that church family, the community that can hold you up and hold you accountable and be there for you when you need somebody. So at church, how are we doing this? We're doing Bible studies. There's a sign up back there for another Bible study that's getting ready to start. We have the Gospel Project on Wednesday night. We have our Sunday messages, community groups. This summer we did the Acts Project. These are all things that we can do together that not only will teach us more about the Word of God, but they also will help you guys form bonds among each other to where you have that group of people that when you need something, when things get tough, when you have an issue, you have somebody to lean on. And not only that, when they have an issue, they'll have somebody to lean on. And we kind of, we join that, we form that community, that safety net for people. We need to be an encouragement to people. And why do we not do this? We don't do it because we're lazy and selfish. Most of us, we don't want to be in the Word every day. We don't want to devote that 5, 10, 15 minutes a day to reading the Bible and trying to get a deeper understanding. We're selfish in the fact that we don't necessarily want to reach out to other people and have them, interrupt our routine and interrupt our life if they need something, and we got to put that away. That's something we need to talk to God about. We need to pray about, that He helps take that from us. All the time in clinic, nearly every day, I'll have somebody that comes in and they'll have high blood pressure or they'll have diabetes or both, and everything will be pretty mild, pretty borderline. And I'll talk to them and say, hey, if you diet, if you eat this type of food or you exercise, just trying to improve your heart health, 30 minutes, 4 times a week, if you'll do these exercises, I don't think you'll need this pill. I don't think you'll need this medicine. You'll feel better. Almost every one of those people I tell that will look at me and they'll shake their head, nah, just give me the pill. And we do the same thing here. We want a quick fix. We're lazy. We don't want to work for our health. We don't want to work for God. We want to be the ones consuming everything and using, as opposed to actually putting in the work to build that relationship. I've got a story that I'm going to tie a few things into here, so bear with me for just a second. It was December of 2003, and I was in medical school, and by this point I was getting fairly burnt out. We were working quite a bit, Matt, and there was a 3-day cold front that had come through, and the ducks were flying everywhere. It was beautiful, and so a buddy and I, we kind of skipped out on some of our med school responsibilities, And we went down to Eagle Bluffs, which is just south. It's a waterfowl refuge just south of Columbia. And we went down there and tried to draw in. And Columbia is a big town, and this place is only about 5 or 6 miles south of there. It was packed because every guy in Columbia had the same idea. I drew the first pill. We had the #1 spot, so we got our whole pick of the entire marsh. And they'd been killing a lot of ducks. So we were fired up. We get out there, it's 5 in the morning, we're breaking ice as we're going out into the lake. And, it's cold. At this time, it was below 20 degrees, 22 degrees. It was chilly, but ducks are flying everywhere. And as I go into the water, I have my waders on, and I had a fairly cheap pair of waders. They were the Walmart specials that I'd had for about 3 years. I paid $19.99 for them. And I knew they were cheap, so underneath my waders, I had my long underwear, I had my jeans. Under that, I had, basically like snow pants, and then I had my waders. So I was prepared, and I get into the water, and we're going through, setting out our decoys, and I'm getting cold. My legs are getting cold, and they normally got cold because I had cheap waders. But normally they'd get to that point, and I could bear it. So it was fine, but then they kept getting colder and colder. Well, then light pops up, and the ducks are flying, and I'm walking back and forth between the corn rows trying to get my feet. I couldn't feel my feet. And we shot a couple of ducks. My feet kept getting colder and colder. Finally, I told John, my buddy I was hunting with, I was like, man, I got to get out of here and see what's going on. I can't feel my legs. So I was walking back through the duck lake, stumbling on the corn stubble because I couldn't feel anything. I thought I was going to fall and drown. Finally got up onto dry land, and as soon as I stepped out, I heard all the water in my waders sloshing around, and I was up to here. I mean, there was water up to here, and then I start to panic because the water, it was ice cold. I think, all right, I'm going to have frostbite at the very least, possibly hypothermia. Start to panic. I strip down, get my waders off, get my snow pants off, my jeans off, my long underwear off, my 4 pairs of socks off. I'm sitting there in my boxers, and go to my buddy's truck, and it's locked. Like, who locks their truck when you're going duck hunting? So it was locked. But thankfully, right next to his truck was about a 1976 Chevy. And I thought to myself, that guy doesn't lock his truck. I can guarantee that. So I opened his door, and it was unlocked, and the keys were on the seat. So I jump into his truck, and I started up. During this whole time, I'm sitting there thinking, man, I sure hope this guy doesn't come back, because if he does, he's got a gun. He's packing heat. So I am sprawled out in this guy's truck with my legs up on his dash in my boxers with the hot air, with the air blowing. The problem is it was an old enough truck. Unless you were running, that thing was not going to warm up. So I did that. I was probably in there for a good half an hour, and my feet I still couldn't feel them. I mean, it was bad. I contemplated just stealing this truck and driving to town. Instead, what I did was I took my hunting coat and I stepped into it, used the sleeves as my pants and as my boots, and I go shuffling down the levee to go get my buddy to get his keys because I still couldn't feel my feet. Meanwhile, ducks are flying everywhere. The guys are shooting over the top of me, and even the guys in the other pools are like, man, are you okay? And I know they thought I was probably drinking or something. And I was like, no, I'm fine, and as I go shuffling on. So long story short, I finally got the keys to the truck. I got into his truck, got warmed up, and I still can feel with my feet most of the time. So, I'm sorry. I'm on call for the nursery. That's not the nursery. So, anyway, where was I? Okay, so finally get home. As soon as I got home from that day, got warmed up, I got some warm clothes on, I opened the Cabela's catalog. We were in med school, not real well off at that time by any means. I flipped through the Cabela's catalog. I wasn't even looking at the actual description. All I did was went down and looked at the price. I was like, there's the most expensive pair of waders. I'm buying them. So I've never been cold since. But I think this story applies to how we walk it out and how we share with others. First off, my waders were not designed for cold weather hunting. I didn't have the right tool for the job. These were cheap. They were, if it was 60 degrees, they were fine. I think so often we look at our life and we see those holes in our life and we try to fill them with meaningless things. For me, I'll go buy a new horse or, unfortunately things I buy seem to be big for some reason, but, a new horse or something like that. People buy new clothes, a new purse, a new car, a new whatever, trying to fill this void, this desire, this emptiness that they have, as opposed to actually seeking God and seeking a relationship with Jesus to build us up, to fulfill us. I think if we would look at it that way and do that, that would help fulfill us. Plus, we'd be able to go out and share with others and help fulfill them. The other mistake I made is these waders were in a box in the basement, stashed away in the corner. And I'd get them out once a year, maybe twice a year, and I'd expect them to work. I didn't take care of them. I didn't do anything to them. I just thought, hey, I spent $19.99 on these waders. They're going to work for me. I think we do this with God. I think we do this with our walk with Jesus. I do this. That's why I know some of you do it. I do it to where, if things are going good, I may or may not read the Bible. I may or may not pray. I might go weeks without reading the Bible. But then if I think something's going on, if I think there's something wrong with somebody in my family or something at work or a situation or somebody I really care about, there's something going on, well, that's where all of a sudden I'm really in the Word and, praying to God, and it doesn't work that way. A lot of times, I've heard Brent say that Jesus isn't your genie in a bottle. He's not just going to be there when we need him, and if we don't do the work, if we don't have that foundation to build upon. Psalm 1:2 says, "The blessed man delights in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night." And then Psalm 119, 105 says, "Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path." If we're in the Word, if we know what God's Word says, if we have that relationship with Jesus, when things are tough, He's going to show us our next step. He'll give us a direction. He'll show us the path. But we have to be willing to put in the work. The other lesson I learned was my coat did not work very well as a pair of boots or as a pair of pants. It wasn't warm. I couldn't walk in them. It didn't do a good job. I think so many times we try to force Jesus into whatever role we think he should do, instead of having him in our life all the time in every aspect of our life. We just try to make him, our boots or our coat or whatever, as opposed to really building that full-time relationship with him. We want the convenience of just being able to call on him and have him fix any little thing for us. We need that relationship. We need to build it. The last thing, and probably the biggest thing that these pair of waders taught me, was by not being prepared for the hunt, not only did I negatively affect everybody's hunt out there, I negatively affected my own hunt, but everybody else there that was hunting, my buddy, he didn't, have as good of a hunt as he would have, although he's got a good story out of it. The guys that were in the pools next to us, I was disrupting ducks all day. They were, at least for an hour and a half, they were, missing shots and missing opportunities. It took me away from my target. Instead of being out there duck hunting, I was creating some sort of crime, I'm sure, in the front seat of this guy's truck. We do that in our life. Instead of being out there, if we're not prepared, instead of being out there working for Jesus and talking and trying to build his kingdom, we're just, we're taking our eyes off that target. We're distracting people. We have to be ready. We have to be prepared. We have to have our equipment prepared. We have to have that knowledge base. And again, it doesn't have to be a perfect knowledge base, but we have to have that level of preparedness that when that opportunity presents, that we can minister to somebody or teach somebody about Christ, that we're going to jump on it. We're going to jump on it with confidence and know that God has our back and that he's going to fill us with the Spirit and know what to say, so that we can go out and do the Great Commission. So I think the other thing, to do all this successfully, we need to pray. We need to pray often. Pray daily. Pray multiple times daily. It doesn't have to be some magnificent prayer. short prayers, long prayers, whatever. And the other thing, I keep saying this, that I'm going to do it, and I haven't done it, so maybe I need to pray about it more or just actually do it, is make a prayer list. Because I know a lot of times I'll be praying, I end up praying the same prayers all the time, and then, I tell people, I'll pray for you, and I see patients, and I'll tell them, I'll pray for you. I see my patients in the day, and I get home, and I can't remember who I was going to pray for and who I wasn't, and so I, kind of do a catch-all, pray for the people I saw today, which isn't real intimate by any means, but you make those prayer lists so you can actually focus and make your desires, make your prayers known to God. The fourth part of our mission statement, and again, I think this is incredibly important and is an incredibly important part of our mission for this church and our desire for this church, is to teach others to do the same. I think about it, if you have this great relationship with Christ and you have this knowledge in you, but you're not willing to go share it, that's good for you. You're going to be saved. You have this relationship with Christ. You know where you're going. But how much good is it really to other people? How much are you really helping other people? And I think about this in my situation. What would it be like if I had gone to medical school and had all this training, but then I got out and decided not to treat anybody, not to take care of anybody, not to share that knowledge or try to help people because I was afraid to do it. I was afraid of making a mistake. I think all of you guys would, say, come on, you coward. You spent 11 years to do this and you won't even go out because you're afraid you're going to make a mistake. But and that would be justified if you said that. I actually know people I went to school with that are kind of that way. But anyhow, I won't get into that. And it would be justified if you said that. But I think we need to reverse the roles. If you're in here and God's really done something great in your life and made a positive impact, but you're just bottling it up, keeping it in there, kind of being selfish with it and not sharing it with others, you're a coward. I know I've been a coward several times. I mean, I think about that all the time in clinic. I think, man, I should say something, but, well, it might get me behind even further than I already am, or, I don't want him to react differently or whatever. And so, I probably have more opportunity throughout the day than almost anybody to share. So I'm not calling just you guys cowards. I'm a coward too, but so let's not be cowards. Let's take those opportunities. Let's share with people. What's the worst thing they can say is no or be quiet. So let's do it. The other thing I think is if we looked at this, if we came in here and listened to messages on Sunday when Brent's preaching, and we listened with the idea that, hey, we're going to go out and teach this to somebody else, how would that change how we'd listen to the message? My guess would be we'd listen more closely. We'd actually try to apply it to our life. Maybe we would take notes. Maybe tonight when you get home and, after the ball games and you're getting ready to go to bed, maybe you review those notes and review the Bible verses so that you could actually really let them sink in so that when the time comes, you can spew them back out and share them with somebody. Let's learn from this. Let's learn from this and teach others. So, if the praise band wants to come up, we'll wrap this up. I forgot to say something earlier. So, this morning when I was doing this, I told my 7-year-old, I said, man, bud, pray for me. I'm a little bit nervous. And he said, well, Dad, you need to grow. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, what a profound statement for a 7-year-old. He thinks I need to stretch myself and grow in the Lord. And so finally I was thinking, I go, Bud, what do you mean? He said, well, Brent's a lot taller than you. You need to grow. So I was like, well, touche. So but then the next thing he said to me, he looked at me and said, Dad, you're not going to talk as long as Brent does, are you? And so we're going to wrap this up. So to sum it up, the mission of Lifepoint Church is the Great Commission. It is to make disciples of the nations and to make disciples of this county and the surrounding counties. But I want you guys to do something more. This church wants you to do something more. we want to make disciples. We want everybody coming here to go out and teach and spread the word and make disciples. I thought about this, and if on the average week, let's say we had 300 people in here, 300 older kids and adults that could go out and make a difference. And our children can make a difference. I don't mean that. They definitely make a huge difference. But if we had 300 adults, and if you guys would go out and over the course of the next 3 months, invite 3 people. So if you would invite one person a month to this church, and if only one of those 3 actually came, and then 3 months from now, all the people that were coming went out and invited 3 people over the course of 3 months, and only one person came, and we kept doing that. And we did that for 1 year. Like I said, this is one person a month, but only 1 out of 3 is coming. And we all did that in 12 months from today, there would be 9,600 people. So it doesn't take much. When you go and we work together, it doesn't take much. It's not one person asking 50 people or 100 people to come in here. If you'll go out and ask 1 or 2 people and get them in here and put them on your heart, and then they ask people, that's exponential growth right there, and that's what we're looking at. And keep in mind, if they don't feel comfortable at this church, they don't have to be at this church. Get them into a church that fits them, that fits their personality. Just get them into a Christian church where they're learning the Word and learning about God and learning about Jesus. We can do it. So my challenge to you guys is to be bold. Go out there and talk to somebody. Make that a priority before next Sunday. You say, hey, I'm going to talk. I'm going to share Jesus with at least one person I come in contact with. And if you fail or it doesn't go well, who cares? But try it. You'll learn from it. Next time you'll get better at it. But think about if it does work. Think about if you are successful with it, the difference that you could literally save somebody's life. And I'm not talking about saving somebody's life, keeping them alive for another 20 years here on earth. I'm talking you could save their life for eternity. That's more powerful than anything I do at my job. That would be fantastic. So we'll wrap this up. How many people are ready to watch the Chiefs game today? All right. Look at that. If you guys would have that same excitement for Jesus, go out there and share that. Be that excited. Think about the difference you can make. So let's do it. Let's pray real quick. God, thank you so much for this day. And